Hello. Thank you to everyone who's joined us today for this Plan International USA policy event, where we will discuss Plan's new State of the World's Girls report. I'm Justin Fugel, the head of policy here at Plan, and we'll be shining a light today on the harassment and abuse girls face when they on social media, because that abuse silences girls' voices and is a barrier to their leadership. And of course, the COVID-19 lockdowns have pushed nearly everything online and made that kind of hostile online environment even more difficult to deal with. In Plan's new report, 58% of girls said they are being harassed or abused online. Now that's a big number. So what do we mean by harassed and abused online? Girls said they are attacked with vulgar language, with body shaming, with threats of sexual violence, and with blackmail. This creates a hostile environment they have to confront as they seek education, employment, and entertainment online. And unfortunately, the girls reported that so far, social media platforms and government are doing too little to help. So that's what we will be discussing today. In the first half of the session, we'll hear reactions from two leaders in the US government. And in the second half, we'll hear from two young female advocates working with Plan to change this situation. We'll also hear about a new initiative between Plan and Instagram, as well as a call to action from the girls themselves to the social media platforms. And we'll take questions from the audience. So we have a full agenda. First, to set the scene, I wanted to share 3 slides with the headline statistics. Plan International is a girls' rights organization. We work in more than 75 countries to advance the rights of girls and children around the world. And each year, Plan publishes the State of the World's Girls report to celebrate International Day of the Girl. Plan advocated for the creation of International Day of the Girl, and the UN General Assembly created it in 2011. Next slide, please. This year, Plan surveyed 14,000 girls in 22 countries about their freedom online, asking about experiences on Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, and others. The girls said attacks are most frequent on Facebook, then Instagram, WhatsApp, Snapchat, Twitter, and the other apps all came in at 6% or less. A third of girls from racial or ethnic minorities, and more than half of LGBTQI+ girls, have been harassed and abused online due to their identities. Next slide, please. Half the girls said online attacks are more frequent than in-person attacks. And 1 in 5 girls has been left fearing for her physical safety. So these online attacks can become all too real. And here's the crux of the issue. Although most girls have blocked the harassers, and 35% said they have reported the problems to the social media platforms, the attacks persist. Partly because the perpetrators are anonymous and can easily create new accounts. In a moment, we will hear from Plan's CEO, Tessie San Martin, and our 2 keynote speakers, Congressman David Cicilline and USAID Deputy Assistant Administrator Gloria Steele. But first, we wanted you to hear from the girls and young women themselves. So we're going to show you a video now with clips from the interviews Plan conducted. The young women were asked, what would you like to see in a non-abusive environment online? So let's see the video, please.
Para mí un mundo sería que no hubiera un acoso, tengan un poquito más de respeto a la sociedad contra las mujeres.
Where girls can get access to the internet without have to worry about being harassed, stalked, threatened, or bullied for the things that they share.
For me, a world where there's online freedom means safety. Simply that.
Las plataformas virtuales deben ser una oportunidad para expresarnos. No deben ser espacios donde haya acoso o vulneraciones.
El hecho de saber que hay violencia en las redes sociales es algo que nos indigna como mujeres.
I don't feel that safe because maybe others will take me in a negative way.
Es una situación que afecta a todas las niñas del mundo porque al estar expuesta a las redes, pues son redes mundiales, están por todas partes.
Tengo varias ideas que ya estoy así a punto de escribirlas, pero me cierro y me pongo a pensar porque puedo recibir críticas o más.
Son muy pocos los chicos que han tenido acoso por redes sociales. La mayoría somos las chicas que tenemos acoso.
I think the social media platforms should come up with ways like enhance their settings, maybe on how you can report harassment.
El mensaje que yo puedo dar es que debemos promover una vida en internet más libre para las chicas, ya que nosotras necesitamos expresarnos libremente, siendo esto un derecho humano fundamental.
Thank you. It's important to hear their voices and their vision for how social media should be. And I was really struck that the comments are very similar, whether the girls are in Peru or in the Dominican Republic or in Malawi or in the United States. Let me now introduce Plan's president and CEO, Tessie San Martin, who we are proud to say recently completed 10 years as the leader of our organization. Tessie will introduce today's keynote speakers. Tessie, over to you.
Justin, thank you. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. I'm very pleased to be here as Plan launches its 2020 State of the World's Girls Report and this very important topic of online harassment and abuse. As we've migrated collectively to living online for a good chunk of our time, this issue of online harassment and abuse is not just timely and important, it is simply unavoidable. And we are really happy to have made a space for girls themselves to talk about these issues. Now, as Justin and the young women that you just saw right now in the videos have outlined, the findings from the report are pretty clear. And on one level, maybe it's not surprising. What is surprising is what Justin just said now, which is it really doesn't matter whether you're in Malawi or in El Salvador or in the United States, the experience that girls around the world are feeling in terms of online harassment online is real and is remarkably similar, irrespective of the environment. And this is not right, and it is not something that we should be okay with. In fact, what is kind of disturbing about all of this is that, this migration to doing more and interacting more online has a potential to be hugely empowering and liberating. Because if you think about it, when you're online, hierarchies to a certain extent are flattened, right? We're all the same. There is or should be more access to information, to decision makers, to knowledge, to interactions that maybe normally you would have a harder time accessing because you can't transport yourself to meetings and so on. And we know that, social media and online lives are really important and can be empowering to young people around the world. There was a few years back, for example, a survey in the UK of young people, and they reported that, 62% I think reported that social media had a positive impact on them. And in a more recent survey, Plan found that about 82% of the youth interviewed felt that social media is a very important tool to enable them not just to interact socially, but to learn, to have access to current event information. And for girls in particular, it is an important way of sharing content, and it is or can be a tool of empowerment. But that is not happening, and that is what we're here to be talking about today. And I would also say, as we think about not just this topic of how youth are interacting online with each other and others, and what are the specific risks that now engenders, I think it's also worth for organizations like Plan to be thinking about how, as we move not just our operations online, but as we move more of our program delivery online, what are the additional safeguarding risks that we're introducing because of that? I think we have a special responsibility as organizations that actually take safeguarding very seriously. And we know that this is a topic that has been on the press, that as we move more online, that we consider what is happening on that, in that realm as well, and what aspects need to be especially considered and tightened as we move more programming and advocacy online. So with these thoughts in mind, let me turn, as Justin noted, to two leaders in the US government that are going to be exploring some of these issues with us about what we can do to address and mitigate these risks. First, we're going to hear from Congressman David Cicilline, a Democrat from the great state of Rhode Island. Congressman Cicilline is a member of the House Democratic leadership, a chairman of the House Antitrust Committee, and a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He has been and is a longtime champion of US and global gender equality, and recently chaired a high-profile inquiry about the 4 largest internet companies here in the United States. Plan is ever so thankful for the Congressman's enduring and tremendous support for foreign assistance and global gender equality. And Congressman Cicilline, thank you again for making time in your busy schedule to join us today. Over to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Tessie San Martin, for the very kind introduction and for inviting me to speak with you today in celebration of this year's International Day of the Girl. I also want to thank Plan International for raising awareness about the harassment and abuse that so many girls and young women, including the LGBTQI+ community, face online. Bullying and harassment of children and young adults have long been a concern for educators and parents alike. Simply put, when school environments are unsafe, children suffer. Research has shown that bullying and harassment are major drivers of student dropout and can lead to depression and even physical harm. Harassment is just as harmful to our children when it occurs online as in the classroom. It poses a serious threat to the health and well-being of children and young adults who far too often struggle with anxiety, loneliness, substance abuse, or suicidal behavior because of the abuse they endure online. The proliferation of smartphones and the rise of social media has completely transformed our society, and with it, the nature of abuse and harassment. Like seemingly everything else, bullying and harassment have moved online and into the homes of girls and young women who are unable to escape their tormentors. Technology has allowed bullies to reach children and young adults with unfettered access and often minimal safeguards. Unlike the school, the internet never shuts down. There are no teachers watching. Cyber abuse and harassment can now go viral, magnifying the effects of the fear and shame girls and young women are subjected to. And bullies can remain anonymous, hiding behind a screen name. This abuse is unrelenting and insidious, and it's literally destroying lives. As the world continues to combat the COVID-19 pandemic and turns increasingly to the online world for school and socialization, gender-based violence has turned one of the few safe, socially distant activities into a hostile space for many girls and young women. According to Plan International's recent survey, nearly 6 out of 10 girls from around the world said that they have been harassed and abused online. The survey also found that girls are often targeted online merely because they are young and female. And unfortunately, this experience disproportionately affects girls and young women who are Black or identify as LGBTIQ+, as well as girls and women who have a disability or dare to have opinions or speak out for equality or justice. So let me be clear. Girls should be free to go online without being body shamed. Girls should be free to go online without being sexually harassed and objectified. Girls should be free to go online and share their voice without being attacked for their opinions, for their sexual orientation, or simply because they're girls. Harassment has no place anywhere in our society, and that includes online. It leads to girls feeling unsafe, it diminishes their self-worth, and it suppresses the voices of our future leaders. Social media platforms must take these urgent issues seriously and develop real solutions to address the dangers to our young women that not only exist, but thrive on their platforms. It's not only about developing stronger policies and procedures that are inclusive and promote gender equality, but also about enforcing those standards to create and maintain a safe place online. Moreover, we need effective reporting and data collection to track the scale of the problem and hold bullies accountable for their gender-based violence on social media platforms. Unfortunately, as is so often the case, our nation's laws have failed to keep up with the rapid advances in technology. It's more important than ever that we address the societal harms that stem from widespread abuse of social media platforms. Congress must find a way to hold social media platforms accountable for the conduct that they allow to thrive on their platforms and incentivize them to deliver tangible improvements to provide a safe place online for girls and young women to have a voice, to learn, to socialize, and simply be themselves, free from abuse or harassment. We must also better support schools and school districts to develop and improve anti-bullying and anti-harassment initiatives. I'm a co-sponsor of the Safe Schools Improvement Act, which recognizes that bullying often extends beyond school walls and into students' everyday life through social media, instant messaging, and phone calls. Lastly, it's important that Congress continue to advance legislation solutions that address the problems of gender inequality at its core. This includes continued support of the Violence Against Women Act, a law that establishes programs aimed at preventing and responding to domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking. And as a human rights champion, I've co-sponsored the Violence Against Women Act Reauthorization Act of 2019, which acknowledges the need to combat online predators and includes enhanced penalties for stalking children. This bill passed the House, but it is awaiting final action in the Senate. Toward the same end of combating inequality, I introduced the Global Respect Act, which passed out of the House Foreign Affairs Committee last year. Every human being deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. Every single day, millions of LGBTQ plus people around the world are targeted with violence, harassment, discrimination, and worse. The Global Respect Act would prevent individuals who violate the human rights of LGBTIQ plus people from entering the United States. Our country must stand tall as a fierce advocate for girls, women, and the LGBTIQ community, both at home and around the world. We cannot achieve true equality without elevating girls and women, without protecting them from harm, amplifying their voices, and creating opportunities for growth and leadership in the classroom and beyond. Thank you again to Plan for all of your extraordinary work. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. And I return it back now to your CEO.
Congressman Cicilline, thank you. It is terrific to hear the various proposals that you've been championing. This is a complex, multi-layered, multi-dimensional problem that does require a variety of, as you're suggesting, certainly there are important legislative initiatives that need to move forward. We look forward to working with you on those. Thank you again for joining us this year, yet again, to mark another International Day of the Girl. Next, it is my pleasure to introduce Gloria Steele, who has served with distinction in a number of leadership roles at USAID. Gloria is a member of the U.S. Senior Executive Service, is currently Deputy Assistant Administrator for Asia, after leading USAID's Asia Bureau for 4 years. From 2010 to 2015, she served as USAID's Mission Director in the Philippines, the Pacific Islands, and Mongolia, with a sizable program budget of $500 million. So these are all incredible leadership positions that she's held, and through it all, she has been such a terrific champion of global gender equality. She was also the agency champion for USAID's first digital strategy, which was launched last year. And in that strategy, which I really like, AID prioritized two things: reducing digital gender gap and online harassment. And I like the objectives of the strategy. One is the strategic use of technology to enable better programming, which has never been more relevant than today, given the fact that we're in increasingly a virtual world with all kinds of impediments to travel and large group gatherings and so on. The second objective of that strategy is, as the report puts it, is the strategic use of technology to address the critical components of the digital ecosystem that help us achieve our own goals and empower all individuals to achieve their own aspirations. It is precisely this concern with the broader ecosystem, I think, that drives some of these conversations today. So a very prescient strategy it is. Gloria, thanks again for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you, Tessie. Good morning, everyone. It is my great pleasure to be here with all of you today. I want to congratulate Plan International for its comprehensive 2020 State of the Girls World Report, and thank you for drawing attention to such a critical global issue. I'm also pleased to learn that Plan International has launched an initiative with Instagram to address the online harassment of girls and young women. This is a significant concrete step forward in an effort to promote safe access to digital tools for everyone. Safe and inclusive access to digital technologies, including the internet, is critical to advancing development, powering economies, and strengthening security. When we look at the digital ecosystem around the world, we see enormous gaps in digital access of marginalized populations, especially of women and girls. In the developing nations, more than half of the world's women are not connected to the internet. Without access, women and girls are denied educational opportunities, timely health information, necessary social interactions, and online assistance to entrepreneurial endeavors. Women and girls who do have access can sometimes face significant dangers. Nearly 3/4 of women online have been exposed to some form of cyber violence. This could serve to discourage women and girls from using the internet and engaging in the digital economies. As I was reading Plan International's report, I was taken aback by the sheer number of girls and young women who have been harassed and abused online. They suffer emotionally and psychologically, and in some cases are subjected to physical danger. Furthermore, we know that pandemics amplify existing inequalities. The growing shift towards digital economies as a result of COVID-19, combined with the pervasive gender digital divide, are further exacerbating social and economic inequalities. So what is AID doing? Around the world, USAID works with women and girls, as well as men and boys, to create opportunities for all. We believe that supporting gender equality unlocks human capital and is essential to smart development. Bridging the gender digital divide will empower growth and allow countries to be more successful along their journeys to self-reliance. Our work promotes women's leadership, targets gaps in access to resources, and addresses gender-based violence, among others. For example, during a USAID-supported coding competition, 3 Afghan women developed a smartphone application that allows women to report street harassment in real time in a way that informs other women of potential problem areas and puts the power in their hands to notify friends and families if they need assistance. USAID recently launched its first ever digital strategy, as Dr. San Martin mentioned, that demonstrates our commitment to secure, inclusive digital ecosystems. As part of that strategy, we are committed to closing the gender digital divide around the world and addressing the disproportionate harm that women and girls face online. In 2018, USAID launched the Women Connect Challenge, a global effort to leverage local solutions to improve the access and use of technology for women and girls. After 2 challenge rounds, USAID has made awards to 12 grantees who are working to close the gender gap by enabling women to engage in global digital environment. Many grantees are addressing the root causes that keep women offline, including restrictive social norms and gender-based violence. Please help us spread the word around that round 3 of the Women Connect Challenge is accepting applications until the 6th of November. Under the US government's Digital Connectivity and Cybersecurity Partnership, or what we call DCCP, USAID plays a leading role in advancing an open digital economy and expanding secure, market-driven, and rules-based internet use. A key aspect of our work is assisting host countries and ministries and regulatory bodies to design, implement, and develop ICT policies. This helps us to create the rules of the road for safe, secure, and inclusive internet use. For example, in Timor-Leste, we are providing technical assistance to the government in drafting legislation on cybercrime and cybersecurity as the country seeks to advance digital connectivity. USAID's Digital Asia Accelerator is helping to advance Southeast Asia's digital transformation by investing in human capital. We are helping citizens become more digitally savvy. We are also helping them to become more cyber safe by increasing public awareness of digital safety issues, providing digital and cybersecurity upskilling, and providing opportunities to engage on digital policy issues in Southeast Asia. In Cambodia, for example, the Digital Asia Accelerator recently concluded an online safety awareness campaign in which it distributed videos with simple digital security tips across multiple online platforms. As a result, the campaign has reached nearly 1.4 million people and prompted more than 35,000 interactive engagements. We are also working to understand how gender-based violence affect our work globally, such as through our recent research on perceptions of gender-based violence online. Our research highlighted that over 85% of respondents who have experienced GBV online reported fearing for their own safety or for the safety of a person close to them. They reported feeling sadness, anxiety, or depression. Some felt discouraged from undertaking online activities. It is clear that our programming needs to better account for this real risk that women and girls face. As we make more headway in closing the digital gender gap and in enabling more girls and women to come online, we all need to work together to help ensure that access to digital technologies and the internet is inclusive and safe. We must also work in lockstep to protect internet users and build systems that respond to users' security and safety. There is so much more we can do. Our work will be stronger if we all work together and strengthen partnerships. As more and more women and girls have the benefit of digital access and use, it is important that we prioritize their safety, security, and ability to fully benefit from an increasingly digital world. Let me end here. And again, I want to thank Plan International for inviting me here today to join all of you. And I thank you for all the work that you do in this area. Over back to you, Tessie. Thank you.
Gloria, thank you. So terrific, really, to see the type of and hear about the type of programming that USAID is spearheading in this area of digital access, cyber security, and how it's all linked to broader goals of, gender equality and girls and women's empowerment. Really important work, and we really look forward to continuing to work with you and other USAID colleagues to make more progress in these two areas of closing the gender gap and addressing online harassment. It really is so encouraging, I think, to hear this high level of commitment from our own government to address the issues that that the girls themselves are feeling. And speaking of what the girls themselves are saying, I think maybe we've heard enough from adults. I think it's time to hear about the young women themselves and what they have been experiencing, and in particular what they think about the types of strategies and approaches that are important to carry forward. As Justin noted, when we did the survey of these 14,000 girls in around the world for this report, they called on two things, right? They called on governments to take action. We've seen some of the things that are being done to take action to reduce online abuse and harassment. That's been the topic of what we've been discussing part of this morning. But the other issue was a call on the social media companies themselves to do more to protect them. The responsibility and opportunities for social media companies to work on these issues is really the topic of our next panel, which is going to be moderated by Justin. So Justin, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Tessie. And also adding my thanks to Chairman Cicilline and USAID Deputy Assistant Administrator Gloria Steele. Turning now to the social media platforms. Girls most frequently reported harassment on Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, as I mentioned earlier. And as I recently learned, those are all owned by Facebook. Facebook has taken a number of actions to reduce hate speech on its platforms recently. For example, removing more racist and anti-Semitic content and banning QAnon groups. And this is encouraging news because it suggests more actions can be taken to reduce abuse and harassment based on gender as well. As we will see in this next video, the Girls and Young Women Plan interviewed have published an open letter to the social media platforms, calling on them to take more action. So let's see that video, please.
Dear Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. We represent the 14,000 girls from 22 countries who spoke to Plan International about online abuse. We are urgently asking you to work with us to end online harassment on your platforms. We love them. They're a huge part of our daily lives. We use them not just to connect with friends, but to lead and create change. But they are not safe for us. We get harassed and abused on them every single day. We are physically threatened, racially abused, sexually harassed, and body shamed. Online violence is serious. It causes real harm, and it's silencing our voices. As this global pandemic moves our lives online, we are more at risk than ever. Did you know that 50% of us face more online harassment than street harassment? And 42% of us lose self-esteem or confidence as a result. Online violence shapes our identity while telling us what's wrong with our identity. Girls are harassed for their ethnicity and race, and girls who identify as LGBTIQ+ are harassed for being themselves. We are told if we can't handle the harassment, we shouldn't be on social media. That's messed up. We shouldn't have to cope and shrink ourselves in an unfair system. The world needs to stop normalizing online violence. We know that many of you are taking steps to make your platforms safer. That's awesome. Thank you. But right now, it's not enough. Girls in all our diversity need to know that when we're abused and threatened online, we can report it and you'll take action. Our practical solution? Be our allies. Speak to us, listen to our experiences. Work with us to create stronger reporting mechanisms for violence that meet girls' needs and hold perpetrators to account. The time to act is now, so girls are free to be online. We'll be waiting for your call.
Thank you. And as you can see at the end of the video, you can also sign on to the petition, either at planinternational.org or planusa.org. So this call that they're making for stronger reporting mechanisms is critical because the girls are already blocking accounts and reporting the abuse to the social media platforms, but not enough is being done. The survey showed that Instagram is the site girls and young women use most. And as Gloria mentioned, Plan approached Instagram. And as a first win for the campaign, we were able to announce a new initiative on International Day of the Girl. Plan is going to organize listening sessions with 15 young advocates with the program and policy teams at Instagram. And those listening sessions will also inform Facebook and WhatsApp. And of course, then it's critical that those listening sessions be followed by tangible commitments to improve reporting mechanisms. So we'll be continuing to work on this with the young women and with the government leaders and the social media platforms. Our next speaker is working to reduce online violence in her home country of the Philippines. Shayna is a youth advocate who has worked with Plan and her peers to combat online sexual exploitation of children. And Shayna has also been a leader in the reduction of online harassment, for example, playing a role in the passage of a new law in the Philippines called the Safe Spaces Act. Earlier, we heard about the digital divide, and as it turns out, Shayna's internet connection is not stable enough for her to join us live today. So she has sent pre-recorded answers to the questions. So the first question we asked Shayna is, we know that you're involved with the Girls Advocacy Alliance, one of Plan International's initiatives that promotes girls and young women's freedom online by combating different forms of online violence. Can you tell us about your achievements?
Actually, it was 2018 when I became part of this initiative. It started when I became part of the social media training organized by the National Rural Women's Congress, which is one of the Plan International local partner here in the Philippines. At first, I thought it is just an ordinary organization, but then I realized that this is not a simple initiative. That's why I love being part of it. Now, I am the chairperson of our organization, which is what we call MAYA, or the Mariveles Youth Alliance. We do orientations in different schools here in Mariveles to promote our advocacy to end the sexual exploitation of children. Also, we in MAYA are active in reporting to the authorities of child abuse and exploitation, both offline and online. As of now, there are 2 MAYA that is child representative in the Municipal Council for the Protection of Children. And there are 5 high schools that recognize us as a youth organization that works against gender-based violence. In our organization, we do different activities like participating in drafting of the Safe Children Online Ordinance. We also attend the government public hearings. Actually, the Safe Children Online Ordinance is already enacted, and it takes into an account to the voices of children, youth, and girls like myself. Also, I went to different places to represent my fellow advocate. Moreover, I represented Luzon, the largest island here in the Philippines, during an online rally against child marriage. In celebration of this year's International Day of a Girl Child, I, together with my co-advocates in Mariveles Youth Alliance, led an online campaign that empower Filipino girls to raise their voices, be proud of who they are, and work together to create an equal future where every girl can live, speak, and lead without any fear of discrimination, abuse, and violence. Lastly, I will end this question with a quotation. Equality is not a female fight. It is a human fight.
Thank you, Shayna. So the second question we asked Shayna is, tell us about the new law in the Philippines that hopes to reduce online abuse and harassment. What does the law do? What are the next steps? And what is the role for a young online advocate like yourself?
It is the Safe Spaces Act. It's new here in the Philippines. It was just passed last year, 2019. And I was actually part of the formulation of its implementing rules and regulations. Safe Spaces Act reduces online abuse and harassment by penalizing gender-based sexual harassment on street, public places, workplace, educational and training institutions, and most especially in online. It defines online harassment at any act of sexual harassment, that use information and communications technology and terrorizing and intimidating victims. Violators can be imprisoned for 6 months up to 6 years and required to pay 100,000 pesos to 500,000 pesos or 2,000 to 10,000 US dollars. Government agencies are now starting to implement the law. We here in the Philippines, especially Plan International, is holding meetings with the Philippine Department of Information and Communications Technology to move forward with the implementing the law provisions against online sexual harassment. Also, we started localizing it here in my municipality by creating the Safe Children Online Ordinance. As an advocate and chairperson of my youth organization, we created an explainer video to raise awareness among young people about this law. And we also talk about it in all of our activities like the radio guesting.
Yeah, thank you, Shana. It's great that you're able to work nationwide and also there in your municipality. So the third question we asked is, whose responsibility do you feel it is to make the online environment safer for women and girls?
I believe that everyone has a responsibility to make online a safer environment. But particularly, it is the lawmakers, government agencies, social media companies, parents, school, youth, advocates, and everyone, of course. For lawmakers, they need to create policies for safer online environment. For government agencies like the Department of Information and Communications Technology and the telecommunications companies here in the Philippines, they should do something about the content that is harmful for girls and children. For social media companies like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, to not allow content that promote and show violence against children and girls. For parents, they should receive information and support on how they teach and help to protect their children. For school, they should teach students on how to be safe and responsible online. For youth, be responsible in every post that we make and must report every little action that we think is inappropriate. Us, the advocates, to continue raising awareness among young people about their digital rights and the danger that might happen online. Most especially everyone in this world. We must always think before we click and report all cases of online violence that we will see.
Thank you, Shana. And yeah, I like how there's a role for everyone, the role for government, and the social media platforms for youth, and really for everyone who works and is online. So the last question we asked, Shana, is what specific actions would you like to see government policymakers and social media companies take to make online platforms safer for girls?
I believe every girl needs an online platform where they can express their feelings without any fear of being judged, abused, exploited, and hacked by anyone for their personal or financial gain that they can use in online sexual exploitation of children. I want our representatives and senators to conduct investigations in aid of legislation to see why, in spite of many Philippine laws on child protection, why is violence against girls still happening online? When they do this, they must include girls and young women like me because we know what girls are going through and the solutions that they need. That's why we must be included in all decisions and discussions that affects us. Next, I want policymakers at the local level to pass an ordinance that will ensure girls are safer online and implement the laws that will support girls' safe, free, and active participation online. As for social media, I think the problem is the accounts that contains child sexual abuse materials can be taken down easily. But it is very simple to replace it with new accounts. So I want that the social media companies to intensify their community standards, explore limiting one account per person, create mechanism that recognize previous perpetrators, make it easier to report online violence in the social media, and create solution with us.
Thank you, Shayna. And thank you for all your work in the Philippines. And we hope you were able to tune in. Let me turn now to Vishwa, who is a member of Plan USA's Youth Advisory Board. Vishwa is with us live and will be able to reply to questions from the audience. So you can send those now using the Q&A function in Zoom. Vishwa, as the questions are coming in, let me ask you, as a young advocate in the US, with so many of your personal, academic, and professional interactions taking place online, do you have any specific examples of online harassment that you've experienced that you would feel comfortable sharing?
Sure. So one thing I'll preface this with is I'm not extremely or particularly active on social media. And so I was pretty surprised when I was harassed. And in fact, when I was harassed, it wasn't as a response to anything that I'd posted on social media. It was a response to something that I'd written. I'd written a couple articles on religious violence, particularly in India, as well as in states like Burma. And so I woke up one day and saw in my inbox that someone had shared my entire Facebook profile. And so I went to take a look at what it was. And it was this man who had read one of my articles, who had found my Facebook profile, and who had written up essentially a post researching and stalking what university I went to, a couple of articles that I'd written, my university affiliations, professors that I've had, information I had no idea this man could have access to. And so I woke up one day and saw that this right-wing zealot middle-aged man halfway across the world had essentially broadcasted my profile to his entire network. And it scared me. And it scared me knowing that that could never have a physical impact on me just because of the kind of privileges that I came from, the fact that I wasn't physically in that location. And it still scared me. And I told my friends and my family and my professors, no one was surprised. We all reported it, nothing happened. And to me, that really kind of set in stone that you don't have to be particularly active on social media to be harassed. In the age we're in, I think that social media platforms have just been another way to stalk and to get information on young women and activists across the world. And I think for me, what stood out as an extremely gross power dynamic between this middle-aged man and someone who's not even 20, me, didn't seem that way to whomever we reported it to. So it was disappointing to me that the folks on the other end of the social media companies who were doing this community monitoring didn't see that that was a power dynamic that could potentially be a chilling effect down the road.
Wow. Yeah, there's way too much of that going on, as the survey showed. And I think also when I mentioned this result to many people, they thought, oh, it's only 58%. It seems like it might be higher than that. I thought 58% was plenty high already. As we've mentioned a few times, Vishwa, Plan and Instagram have announced this new agreement to work together on these issues and to have listening sessions between Instagram and youth advocates like yourself and Shayna. And so what would you like to tell Instagram?
Yeah, first, thank you. I think this is an extremely great step. One thing that I'll like to say to Instagram, as well as the other social media companies, is to really internalize the principle that investing in proper protection infrastructure and community monitoring doesn't necessarily mean that you're compromising on an otherwise perfectly free or democratic social media landscape. I think that's precisely the misunderstanding that has fueled the lull in action, both on the macro level in both the public and private sectors, who are respectively worried that investing in proper community monitoring or policing is somehow going to impede on an otherwise perfectly free speech conducive social media landscape. And I think that's an incredible myth, and it needs to be broken and needs to be internalized on an internal level so that social media companies are investing in infrastructure without this kind of philosophical impediment. And the reason I say this is because when you aren't investing in the proper infrastructure to protect young girls, you're creating what's in effect a regressive tax, a chilling effect, and you're forcing young women to internalize the costs of speaking up. And so they're constantly having to weigh whether speaking up and voicing their perspective is worth the potential slew of online harassment they're going to receive. And that's not particularly democratic either. You're creating what's in effect an impediment and a tax on speaking. And when you do that, you're reproducing existing social hierarchies and existing structures of power onto the social media landscape. So whatever equity you're achieving by giving everyone a voice, you're destroying yourself by not enforcing and investing in protections. And some examples that I'll give, I know young women in Bangladesh, for example, who are using the social media landscape, Facebook specifically, to combat child marriage, to create community reporting mechanisms so that they're able to catch these issues early on and give and afford young women protections they deserve. We see young women in Sudan who are rising up and fighting for protests against an authoritarian government. You see incredible actions by young women. And the number one thing, and one of the main things that stops them, is this potential that they're going to be harassed, and their families and maybe their brothers, they're people who are pulling them out of the social media landscape for fear that it might come to their personal well-being or might come to hurt them in the long run. So I would encourage Instagram and all these social media companies, Facebook specifically with all its constituent social media companies, to do more listening sessions, to go into local communities and to really get a lay of the land in terms of what the social, economic, and political factors are that shape that landscape, and what young women and other minorities, religious, ethnic minorities, really need to feel protected when they're voicing their opinions on social media and fighting for change.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of really good ideas there. And so we have time for a question from the audience. The question is, while we wait for the social media platforms to take action, are there techniques that girls can put into practice to cope with harassment, like support groups? This audience member asked.
Yeah, I think Shayna did a wonderful job of speaking of what that could look like in her community. Yes, I think there are a lot of organizations that are doing incredible work in protecting girls and giving them resources to protect themselves. But I think it's really important to not focus on that, because the more I think young women have enough to deal with on their plate, and depending on where you are in the country, it's more or less, and around the world. I don't think it's particularly fair to shift the narrative to young girls in terms of like, how can you protect yourself? Because the
right.
big guys or social media companies and folks in power are just going to take a long time. So I think it's important for young women to just fight for change and to demand change at the highest level, because exactly what I was talking about, when you shift the responsibility to girls, you're essentially tasking them with the responsibility of fixing how they behave online. And that is a chilling effect. So that's not equal or equitable either.
Yes, well, thanks very much. Thanks, Vishwa. Well, that's all the time we have today to explore this important topic, but there are many things to follow up on and a number of next steps with both the US government and the social media companies. I would like to again thank Congressman David Cicilline, USAID Deputy Assistant Administrator Gloria Steele, our powerful youth advocates Shayna and Vishwa, Plan CEO, and of course all of you. Now, remember, you can join the Youth Advocates open letter to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Go to planusa.org/freedom-online. That's planusa.org/freedom-online. And at last check, the petition had over 52,000 signatures worldwide. So please join us. And thanks again.